morning, Mark Novak. How are you?
Good, Burge. Good. What's happening? Michael Berger, commercial expert. Mark Novak,
Yeah, Mark.
residential.
Everything expert, the principal, the licensee, the man in charge, the leader.
Stuff, fearless leader, stuff expert. And
Yes.
we're going to talk this morning about superannuation.
Wait, we've got to do this. Action. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Morning Minutes with myself, Michael Bergio, and the infamous Mark Novak. What are we talking about, Superman?
Superannuation.
Perfect.
We're seeing a lot of people doing deals with superannuation at the moment, and we thought we would help people by talking about some of the transactions that we're seeing, the profile of the buyers that are buying their superannuation.
Just lost audio in my ear. So talk about super. Yep, I got you back.
The style of person that's buying with their super, the style of property people are buying with their super, how they are buying with their super. It's a significant part of it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, so let's okay, first of all, buying super, there's definitely a lot of hurdles to jump through.
Your head on Instagram's very on fire. It looks like you're really sunburned.
Yeah, really red, eh? Thanks for the orange. We put the orange thing on. Okay.
Orange filter. So Michael, what brought this on is did a transaction yesterday. One of the prospective interested purchasers was buying in their super. Out of interest, I actually just bought something in my super as well. And yeah, it's pretty interesting because the benefits of buying in super are pretty good. So let's have a quick chat about why someone would buy in their superannuation.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we're seeing a lot of people look at commercial property generally for the superannuation transactions. Is what's
why?
And that is generally higher rental returns compared to residential, because all the money sort of sticks into your super, and a lot of those parties are looking for more higher cash return rather than capital growth, because they basically want more money in their pocket now, not necessarily for the future compared to something. Yes.
So super for dummies, and especially for people that are 18, 19, 20, your employer has to put in 9.25% of whatever you earn into a kitty. The Australian government makes it mandatory that this is done. So anyone that employs anyone in Australia, by law, the employer must contribute of that person's wage 9.25% into their superannuation account. As an employee, you would almost never know it's there. Never feel it. It doesn't change your world much at all, and you can't actually touch it until you get to a mature age. And that's a bit of a moving target, 65, 70, 75. As we get older, the government's going to be moving that up. And it just means it's forced savings. It can be used I believe, in life-threatening circumstances. Whereas if you're terminally ill, you can tap into it, I believe. Or if you're retired, you can tap into it and start spending that money. But you pretty much can't touch it till you get old.
Yeah, and this was brought in to take a lot of pressure off the pension for an older growing population from the government. So they really wanted something that people basically take pressure off the people paying taxes, which were going to the people who were retired because they had no income and they received money. So it's one of those things where it doesn't really affect you up until you need it, and it's a huge role. Like what you do in your 20s, 30s, 40s can have a significant impact on basically your quality of life once you retire. So it's one of those things, because you don't really notice it or you don't have much to do with it, you sort of just forget it. But then it's one of those things you need to be looking at it as soon as you're working, have structures in place. There are great super funds. So what people do, it can be in a super fund, which then they invest, and there's a few out there and they get returns. So it is making you some money, but we are seeing a lot of people move that into property for far greater returns.
We're one of the we're one of the only countries that actually only really advanced economies are clever enough to get their people their to actually contribute to their retirement. So the government figures that if they don't have to support you when you're older, you're less burden and less strain on the economy. So it's quite an advanced thing, not common around the world. Australians are very good at doing it. But the problem is when it sits, where does that superannuation sit? Before we talk about that, the reason, another thing the government does is they don't tax you on this money.
Yeah.
So they let you take away that 9.25%, and they will not charge you tax.
What? The government won't tax you? God, how good is that? They must really want this.
That's why it's attractive to people, because the government's saying, "Hey, we'll let you whack it into this mystery account, and this mystery account, we won't tax you anything for it." So, so often people starting to get into their 50s, 60s are trying to push a little bit more into that account because they don't have to pay tax, and they can enjoy the money sooner than later when they retire. It's not 40 years away or 80 or 50 years away. It's maybe 10 years away. Now, this is where it gets tricky. When it sits in that account, you as an employee can decide which superannuation company you want to use, and you as an employee can actually turn around and say, "Hey, I want it to be in diversified stocks. I want it to be in different things." But only of late, the government has said, "We will let you buy property with that superannuation money." Only of late, they've said, "You know what? We'll even let your superannuation get a loan." That's right. We'll let your money that's sitting in that account ask for a loan and get a loan as well. And that's what's bringing us to today's conversation.
So how long ago do you reckon it was? So Super's been around how long? 30 years? 20 years? 30?
I think actively probably 25 years.
Yeah, 25 years. And were you able to buy a property? Were you able to buy property all the time in Super? Or is it only in the last couple of years?
No, you had to buy commercial property. They only allowed probably about 10, 12 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am on my numbers exactly, but it's more the principle.
That's right.
It was about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, they said, "Okay, we're going to let you buy a commercial property with your superannuation."
Which is retail shops, offices, warehouses. Great. Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, Amal. Love always having you guys on. Plenty of people watching as well, I can see on the thing. So if anyone has questions, type it in there. Anything, we will interact. So we love it there. So
don't feel
same on Insta. Any questions?
Guys, about any questions, and on the fly we're going to answer them while we're talking. So
okay, so you can buy commercial property. What else?
Outright, by the way, outright. Ooh. So you have to have all the cash in the super account in order to buy the property commercial. Then the government turned around and said, "We will allow your superannuations to take out their own loans, but we're going to put a lot of laws against it. So it's really, really hard to do it." Then the government turned around and said, "We're going to allow you to do it for residential as well. But you can't live in the property. It has to be an investment vehicle, has to be an investment property. We're not going to allow you to do that." So that was then that was the commercial property you could buy in your superannuation, and it was a residential property you could buy in your superannuation, and you could get out loans. Now they want a big fat deposit in your account, in your super, so they won't let you buy with 10% in your money as a deposit. They want like almost 30%, 35% in your super, and your super can borrow about 70% of the purchase price of the property.
So that's definitely a big difference in the buying in your resi, buying in a personal name and just super. It really, to only be able to get, because I reckon residential, you get 5-10%. You can basically get a loan for 90% of the funds, and super. So that's a big difference, because someone may ask, well, why don't I buy everything in my super if it's the no tax and the benefits there? It's generally you're basically buying for less because you got to borrow a lot more. but that would have been a lot having to borrow 100% mark. So not being able to borrow any. Like, there's not many properties these days being bought outright. So I think when they had that rule, basically, well, they weren't seeing people buy properties till they were in their 40s, 50s, a good 15, 20 years, 60s almost. Because if the average wage is say 80 grand, 8 grand a year is going into super, 10 years is 80 times 4, 320. Like, you're never going to be able to really buy one.
Okay. Now, can we have a common example of how people are doing stuff in their superannuation now? So let's give me one, Michael, where I know when you think super, you think, oh, this is for people to have a fortune. This is for people to have $1 million in their superannuation account. But most of the transactions we're seeing are people in their probably late 30s, early 40s, 50, and they are, so I'll say 40 to 50, and these guys have they've joined their super.
Yep.
So So with your super, with your super, it can be related parties as well. I think it may be able to be even unrelated, but you can join your super, your self-managed super, with other people. So you can say, if you've got a son and daughter that are in their 30s, 20s, 18, 20, 25, if you've got a mum and dad, they can actually make a self-managed super, all put their lazy superannuation into one superannuation account, and that account can buy a property. But let's just do a basic example for now. Let's talk about your one that you sold yesterday, Michael.
My time to talk. Okay. Thank you, Mark. Okay. So what the properties we're seeing people buy is, like, as you said, not the big millionaires and big properties for $1 million. We're seeing I'm getting a lot of interest into doing a lot of deals from 500,000 to 100,000. You may think, what can you buy for that? There's a lot. Offices, storage units, and little doctor suites. So that's where they've collectively combined their super, where, let's say the average, it's 400,000 and they're borrowing 50%. They can borrow a little bit more, but 50%, it's basically having 200,000 in super. Husband has 100, wife has 100, and they combine it. And that's what we're seeing a lot of people buy in their super fund, that type of property.
So and it's pretty clever. Now, the reason why people do this, guys, and you're probably wondering, why the hell would I do it, is, one, it's lazy money, and it's obviously normally sitting in an account you don't even identify with. You don't know who your superannuation company is. You don't know how they invest. You don't know what they do. So it actually puts the power back into your hand with your money, so you know what you're investing and you've got choice in what you're investing is. But I'll tell you, one of the greatest things that I like about buying a property in your superannuation, if I'm 40 and I buy that property today, now typically property doubles every 10 years. Commercial's a bit slower, but say I bought that property for 400 grand, and just go with me on the figures, don't hold me to it. It goes to 800 grand, it goes to 1.6, and I'm the age of 40. I'm then the age of 60. At the age of 60 to 70, I'm 70 years of age, it doubles again. It goes from 1.6, that's right, 1.6 to 3.2. Now, generally, the government used to tax me a fortune when I sold that property. You don't get taxed on super when you sell it if you mature age.
It's huge. And I think you've got to, just to go out there, to put it out there, you've got to be a property lover to really do this with super. You've got to just be that, some people wide that they're only looking at shares or they're doing this, and then there's most of the clients we work with, they're just property lovers. They know it's the way to build. They're strong believers. I think that's a big factor as well for doing it in your super. And once you're that property lover, then you can just sort of see that bigger picture. You can buy a property when you may not be able to buy it in your personal thing. I think that's a key thing. Like, there's property lovers in the world. We love them. They love us because we sell property. But I think that's a common thing I see in all of the clients who are buying. They've got multiple properties and they're just property lover, to say it simply. What are some of the processes, Mark, to do it? So you've got a super fund, but you can't just go like write a check from that, can you? Like, talk us through some of the steps and who would you call?
Accountant is where it's going to start.
Okay, step one, accountant.
Lawyer, which is going to set up your trust for the because
Todd said that as well. You need a good accountant. Yes.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Got to do that. A lawyer is going to set up all the documentation to surround the super purchase. Todd did one as well, by the way, at his very ripe young age of 30 odd. Smart man. And then also you're going to have to get a loan. So it's going to be a bank, and there's not a lot of banks these days that are doing superannuation loans. But all roads will lead to. We're happy to refer you guys if you message us. We'll refer a great accountant to do this for you, a great bank to do this for you, a great solicitor to do this for you.
It's quite overwhelming because you may, it was like, put it this, you normally buy a property, got a conveyance, have done the deal, that's really it. But now the thought of buying in your super, you almost need like this army of people on your board. And it's actually quite specialized. Not all not everyone sort of does it. So feel free to reach out.
It may be hard in one way, but it's easy in another. No one's asking you for a cent out of your pocket. Yeah. Right. It's all being fueled by your superannuation. All of the costs, the solicitor, the loan, all the costs are coming out of that superannuation. So it is I know it's a really hard.
It's a process.
Paperwork process, but it's a really easy financial process.
Yes. And the reward far way out, like even the process you go through, the rewards and the long-term benefit it's why you do it. It's why you get through it. So, because you've got to take it from your normal super and then you got to create a trust. What's that? So I always hear bare trusts and talk us through the levels there. Because you got to self-manage it, isn't it? Super and then self-manage super.
Yes. So they set up a company, which is, so what you got to remember, guys, is with superannuation is it's basically like another human. That's the way they treat it. It's like another human. Your cash in your super becomes its own entity. It becomes your own little human. That human must stay alive until you retire. So that human's you always got to live. So you've actually got to incept. You've actually got to start that that entity. And that's what they call a superannuation, your own self-managed super. And that's what you have to start a name of your own self-managed super company. So you have to start your own company. Then there's got to be a thing called a trustee, which actually administers and manages that company. And there's rules and regulations that the trustee has to abide by. So it's like you're sort of starting a little baby with a little mum. And that little baby's going to grow.
Okay.
Did I talk too much?
No. Again, a lot of feedback. Everyone's loving the topic. Great topic, guys. A lot of people buying in their super they put in the too hard basket. They don't know what's involved. Exactly. Hard up front, but easy time to go. Open to view. Canberra asked a question here. Not getting taxed when selling at a mature age. Is that likely to change in years to come? What's your thoughts on that, Mark?
You know what? The government's been pretty honourable. I know we all like to bash our government, but allow me to give you an example. The government in 1986 decided that they were going to grandfather capital gains tax. So there was a law with property in itself, and they said, you know what? If you bought this place prior to 86 and you sell it in 30 years' time, we're still not going to charge you any tax, guys. But from this day forward, we're going to actually charge you. The government's always been fairly good at honouring or grandfathering stuff. So I guess the question can be answered, can be asked in two ways. Is the government going to do a foul swoop and say, nah, we're changing the laws? Or is the government going to turn around and say, we're going to grandfather it? I reckon they're going to grandfather it. So if you did a deal today, I think that they could change that capital tax thing. I think they probably will, but I've got a feeling they'll grandfather it, and I've got a feeling that they're going to honour the grandfathering as well. So
also keep in mind that they did super to make the retirement easy and take the burden off the government. So then to tax it will just be like, what's the point of doing it in the process? Mark, can someone go, because you're off Facebook, Mark. Todd, Mark, you just give us a thumbs up if Mark, you're back. You're out for a couple of minutes. Wasn't sure if you were there.
I had flat battery on my phone, and the notification came up. Sorry,
Todd. With examples, you said I'd like examples. Is that with what properties to buy? Because I can probably bring one up online and the figures on that. Is that what you mean by examples? Let's do that. I'll bring
until you get your answer. Let's do it from Todd. Let's do an example. So you have I want to do one. Let's do a residential one, which we just sold a one bedder for $450 in Grafton Crescent. Okay, so it's a boyfriend girlfriend. They're both 32 years of age. They've both got $100,000 sitting in their super each, and they also have one of them has a sister. And she's got $100,000 as well. So actually, now let's say they've all got $60,000, right? 60. So what happens is they all nominate their superannuations, brother, sister, and partner of one of the brother, sister, and they all put in 60 each. They go visit an accountant. The accountant says, "Great, you got 180 between you guys." They then set up a superannuation with their three names. They call it brother, sister, and partner super, 101, whatever. Then they find that unit, the one-bedroom unit. They make an offer on that one-bedroom unit. While they're doing that, the accountant's setting up that superannuation. The accountant's talking to a bank who's organising a loan for that property. It's going to take a while. They borrow $260,000 or 250,000 or whatever it is. So between what they borrow and between the 180 that they've got, that makes up the purchase price of $450. The loan repayments interest rates are higher. So the loan repayments on 280, say 300 at say 6% are going to be 20, 24, 23 grand a year. That's going to be the repayments, say 22 grand a year. The rent comes in and pays off the 22 grand a year, because that 450 a week unit is rented for 450 a week. So it's bringing in 20 grand a year.
Here it is. I got it on the page. The property, it should change in a couple of seconds. The live example, 8/11 Grafton Crescent.
On Facebook, there you go. There it is. That's one that we just sold for 450. So the rent coming in 450 times 50 is 20, 22, 24 grand a year. So whatever the interest in, it's being killed, paid off, and leveled out by the rent. Now, the three parties that are buying in their self-managed super are still working. They're still working. So they're still making, the government's still making the employer take 9.25%, and the government's still making, so those three parties are still making money in their super, which is paying down the debt of 250, 60 grand. So the debt's being paid down by the money you're making every year out of your super. The debt's being paid down by the rent that's been coming in off that property. That's a super purchase.
And the great thing is, compared with a residential one, there is, like, as I said, property lover. So you may have had, what did you say? You had 120 grand in super to buy that. Was that your example? 120 combined. So let's just say that
180 combined. Yeah.
180 combined. Now with the patterns of property, now that's going to go up. It's going to double in 10 and double in 10. So that 450 purchase will go say 900 to 1.8. Your debt level is still the same. Let's say, but you've made 1.8 million off the 180,000. So that's where the big difference is if you didn't buy a property, you would still maybe, instead of having 180, you may have 300 or 400.
Yeah.
Like you still grow, but not to the benefits of potentially a property. And that's more of a capital growth play. So that's really good if you're buying early years, 20, 30, 40. When I see people look at commercial property is when it's the other way around. They don't want it, or they just want more cash return straight away. Because if you've then retired, that rental money you can get in your normal account, can't you?
That's a big one.
When you've retired.
That's a big one. When you're mature age and when you're retired, the cash the rent that comes in, the cash that's generated out of that property, guess what?
What?
No tax.
No tax. Wow.
So if I'm making 20 grand a year out of this property, I would normally have to give the government a little bit of money, tax. When you're mature age and when that property's being purchased in the super, you rent it for 20 grand. You put 20 grand in your pocket, you share nothing with the government.
And that's that difference when you're that age level, mature, that position, because if you've got $450,000 to spend, what do you want to buy? A residential returning $500 a week, or for example, that you got on the screen, a commercial at $550, which is producing $44,000 a year, $43,000 minus your outgoings is 35, which is still, what's that, 800 a week? So almost double. So when you're 65, you that's where you've got to have that balance of what you want and get the advice. And that's where we're seeing people, what the difference of when they buy resi v commercial and setting it up. Guys, lots of people watching. Thanks for the questions. Any more questions? Mark, you want to add on that? Like, okay, well, let's go through just quickly. Do you find the property? Here's a big one, Mark. Do you find the property first and then start your super, or do you start your super? What do you?
You know what? You got to go. It's like shopping for a car. You got to go and excite yourself a little bit. So you got to go out, have a look at, oh, I could do this. Oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do this. But just be aware, guys, that it takes a shitload of time to get this super set up. If you were a ninja, you'd probably have it set up in 4 to 6 weeks. And that's really rare. I don't see that much. It's more like 8 to 12 weeks. So go and see the property, get excited, do a dry run with your, I could buy this and I could buy that. Start talking to your accountants. The accountants actually love it because they get to charge you an accounting fee every year on keeping your super alive. It costs you a couple of grand. So they got a bit of business there, so they'll happily do it for you. But I think the first thing is get excited with a property. Second, get excited with an accountant. Third, get excited with a lawyer who drafts it, which your accountant will organise. And fourth, get excited with a loan. Yeah,
and then fifth, and then sort of just want to get excited with that property to run as a test dummy, but don't set on buying it. You're just going to probably let yourself down and annoy yourself. The reason, because you want to know what you're going to get and what to expect. So pretend you're going to buy that property, but to be honest, like, most owners aren't going to wait 8 weeks for you to be in a position to exchange. So look at it, pretend you're buying it, but then look for another property. And you know where I'm seeing a lot of people get stumped, which I think they've got where I would like to educate people a lot on. And I am seeing people, they're like valuation. Like I've never... You should be able to get enough educated advice and look at, like, if you're buying the property, you see the value there. Now, valuers aren't there to really like undercut it or screw it up. I reckon 99% of the time they come in at the contract price, because this day and age, with all the advice out there, all the technology and information, if something's worth 500, you're not really paying 700 for. Like, you can come up with a good idea, but a lot of these loans in your super, they have to have a certain valuer do it, which they appoint. And sometimes it can take a couple of weeks. So even when you find the property you want and you've done all the rest, be mindful. I don't know. Like, I think if you can draw a good conclusion of the value, exchange on it, then get your valuation during settlement which is a formality. If it's
Scary.
scary, but then it's like if you wait for it, sometimes you can miss out. It's a very, very it's a tough one. I think. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I think
that covers a lot.
I think we've given everyone some really good clues, some really good examples, some good IP on buying in your superannuation, guys. It's a good idea.
Shit, that was 30 minutes.
It doesn't affect your lending. It doesn't
Yes.
affect your lending of buying your house and stuff like that, because it's a separate person. So don't worry that you're not going to be able to upgrade your home because you're buying in your super, because it's a completely separate entity.
Big point. Great point. That's a great point.
And pick up the telephone, guys. If you've got a question, message us here or call us and say, hey, can you just tell me a little bit more? Come and sit down with us. We're not going to force a property down your throat. It's free advice, and we're really happy to help.
And we know we can't, because it's going to take you so long to get it all in order to buy it. So we get it.
And if you can help us by tagging your friend that's considering doing something like this, or you'd like to recommend a friend to do something like this,
yes,
it helps us when you tag people into this and forward these things to us. And we do this will turn to a podcast, so keep an eye on that.
Beautiful. All right, guys. Well, I think that's a wrap. We'll be back tomorrow morning, as always. Thank you, everyone, for watching. It's a pleasure, and see you tomorrow. Thanks, Mark. See you guys.
Bye.